a place where we can be together in privacy. And I'm thankful for the thing that makes this house our home, the happiness here, not just today or on Christmas morning, but on a day-to-day basis all through the year.
The world was a different place back in the 50s. We had creepy dolls.
Hi, Heidi. Everyone knows Heidi.
Cigarettes were a cool thing back then.
Tobacco that counts, and Lucky Strike means fine tobacco.
And the new Mercury car had brand new colors.
Until you see them, you can't imagine the brilliant new colors that are available on this year's Mercury.
It was also at this time that the widely accepted view of the mother and child relationship was only to feed them. Warmth, words of encouragement, physical contact, any sort of affection was thought to be harmful to their development. Even John Watson, a famous American psychologist, gave a warning. He said, "There is a sensible way of treating children. Treat them as though they were young adults. Never hug and kiss them. Never let them sit in your lap. Shake hands with them in the morning. Give them a pat on the head if they have made an extraordinarily good job of a difficult task." Needless to say, this view led to sterile, contactless nurseries across the country. Until a man by the name of Harry Harlow, who conducted a study that revolutionized the way we think of a bond between parents and their children. At that time, the discussion of the mother's importance in the development of the child and the impact of physical contact was often under scrutiny, and there were two prominent psychologists at that time that challenged the status quo. What motivated them was a sponsored study by one of them, John Bowlby, and in his report titled Maternal Care and Mental Health. Bowlby went over past research on the impacts of institutionalization on child development and the grief that children feel when they are separated from their mothers. He examined studies such as Renee Spitz's, his own surveys of infants raised in various circumstances, and then, 3 years later, a controversial short documentary film titled A 2-Year-Old Goes to Hospital, which depicts the almost immediate impacts of parental separation. Bowlby found that affection was important in a child's development, and as a result, he downplayed the importance of the mother's involvement in feeding as a foundation for a strong mother-child bond. Over at Henryville Zoo, Harry Harlow was doing research on primates. Harlow came to the University of Wisconsin in 1930 after obtaining his doctorate under the guidance of several distinguished researchers. He developed the Wisconsin General Testing Apparatus to study learning, cognition, and memory, and in order to study the development of the monkeys, he needed regular access to infant primates. He had to rear them in a nursery setting rather than with their protective mothers. Although Harlow, his students, contemporaries, and associates soon learned how to care for the physical needs of their infant monkeys, the nursery-reared infants remained very different from their mother-reared peers. Psychologically speaking, these infants were slightly strange. They were reclusive, had definite social deficits, and clung to their clothed diapers. This piqued Harlow's curiosity, and soon the idea for the wire mother experiment was born. The objective of the study is to observe the development of affectional responses of neonatal and infant monkeys to an artificial, inanimate mother. Eventually, Harlow would place the macaque in a strange setting to further test their bonds. The reason why Harlow chose to study macaque is that, according to him, the only difference between humans and monkeys is that monkeys are more mature at birth and grows more rapidly. Basic responses relating to affection, including nursing, contact, clinging, and even visual and auditory exploration, exhibit no fundamental difference. Harlow began by separating the infant monkeys from their mothers immediately after birth. They were placed in cages with access to 2 surrogate mothers, one made out of wire and one covered in soft terry toweling cloth, which was made out of a block of wood and then covered with sponge rubber. Both mothers would radiate heat and were placed in 2 separate rooms. A total of 8 monkeys were studied and they were divided in half. One half of the participants had the wired mother lactate while the clothed mother did not. The conditions were the same for the other group but were just reversed. And eventually, the monkeys would be tested in a condition where there is a fear stimulus. The conclusion of the study was nothing short of astounding. This graph shows the huge importance of contact comfort in the development of the infant monkeys. Even if the monkeys were in the lactating wire mother condition, as the day progressed, they spent more and more time with the cloth mother. Even after 165 days, the data was still the same. In the condition of a fear stimulus, the monkeys chose to cling to their cloth mother, They would cling to her as much as they could until eventually they calmed down. What's surprising was, the monkeys that clung to their cloth mother would eventually feel secure enough and had the courage to even scare the stimuli. In a second experiment, Harlow took it up a notch and placed the monkeys and their surrogates in a strange room. This time, he tested 4 out of the 8 monkeys in a room measured 6 feet by 6 feet, known as an open field test. Various stimuli were scattered around the room to create curiosity for the baby monkeys. The subjects were placed in this situation twice a week for 8 weeks with no mother surrogate present during alternate sessions and a cloth mother present during the others. A cloth diaper was always available as one of the stimuli throughout all the sessions. As expected, the infants would rush to their surrogate mother whenever she was present. They clutch onto her, rub their bodies against her, and frequently manipulate her body and face. But what happens when the mother is absent? As soon as the infants were released to the room, they would freeze in a crouch position. They would become more vocal. They would crouch, rock, whilst sucking on their thumb. The same reaction can also be found when the cloth mother is present, but by half. Since the monkeys are tested in the course of 8 weeks, whenever the mother was absent, they would rush to the center of the room where the mother was supposed to be placed, and then run rapidly from object to object, screaming and crying all the while. Continuous frantic clutching of their bodies was very common, even when they're not in the crouching position. These monkeys frequently contacted and clutched to the cloth diaper, but this action never really calmed them down. What's surprising was, this behavior is found to be no different in the presence of the wire mother. No difference in behavior if the monkeys were fed by the cloth mother or the wire mother. When I was doing research on this, I thought it was going to be pretty simple and straightforward, but it seems that Harlow didn't stop there. There's this study he did on social deprivation and pit of despair, which I think is 100 times worse than the wire mother study. If you'd like me to make a video on that, leave a comment below. As usual, I'll see you again in the next video.